Welcome to Verillin Boys and Girls Podcast. Today we are interviewing Mr. Mike Murray from Delta Planetarium. Welcome the guest, Mike.
Hello there. Thank you for having me.
Hello. How old were you when you first got interest in space?
You know, I'm one of those space freaks, space nuts. I grew up with it, and I think a part of it was because the space program was in high gear when I was a kid. So we were getting ready to land the first men on the moon. Yeah, I know I'm a dinosaur, but I loved watching all the space flights going on because it was the very first time people were even going into space. So it was incredibly exciting. I also went to a planetarium when I think I was about 7 years old, and that got me excited. And then it just seemed like everything kept happening to push me towards space. I moved to Colorado, got to start seeing stars in the mountains. So yeah, from a really young age.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next question. What interests you most about space?
I love that space makes me feel connected to everything. Some people like to say, oh, space, it's so big, it makes me feel so small and insignificant and like I don't matter. And I don't see that at all. I think space really gives you the big picture, and that you get to see where you and the planet and the solar system all fits together. And you know, sometimes when you think about how big the universe is, or just all the really cool things that are in it, it makes me think, maybe my problems down here on Earth really aren't that big of a deal.
Next question.
If NASA were to plan on sending another spacecraft into space, do you think you would want to go to space one day?
In a millisecond.
All right.
I don't think you can travel to space that fast.
No, I couldn't go that fast, but my decision would be that fast.
Yes.
So, yeah, I've always had this strong desire to want to go to space. And again, part of it is because I grew up watching the Apollo moon landings, and I wanted to do that. And then when I got into high school and college, I realized how hard it was going to be. And it wasn't that I wasn't willing to work to try to become an astronaut, but I started finding other things that made me fascinated about space. Like I wanted to be with telescopes. I liked working in planetarium theaters where I could make shows about space and excite other people about space. So that kind of took over. But you know what? If somebody were to offer me a ride into space, I wouldn't turn it down.
Okay,
Next question.
Was there somebody that inspired you with space?
Probably, one of my earliest inspirations was an astronomer and popularizer named Patrick Moore. And you might remember him, Alex, because he was a very, very popular astronomer royal in England. Soon after him, now some of you might remember this name, Carl Sagan. And he was around and was a huge writer, popularizer, TV producer, but he was an astrophysicist. But he was really focused on the search for life in space, and also where is the Earth going, especially in terms of environment. You know, how much very careful we got to treat our own planet. And so, yeah, those two probably had the biggest influence on me when I was growing up. There's been many since.
Next question. Do you think there is other planets with life on it?
I think the probability of there being life on other planets, especially beyond our solar system, is very high. Now, do I believe that there is life on other planets? I'm not going to say I believe until I see evidence for it. And that's kind of how scientists think. We're kind of natural-born skeptics. Doesn't mean we doubt it. It just means, well, let's do the experiment. How are we going to find out if there's life out there? Well, we don't necessarily need to wait for life to come and visit us because it might be thousands of years. So there are ways that we can go and search for life out there. It might not be intelligent life. Maybe it's just microorganisms.
But that'd still be pretty cool.
Exactly. I mean, can you imagine how big of a monumental announcement that would be? Even if we just found microbes on a moon and Saturn. That means we're not the only planet that can have life on it.
Next question.
Oh, wait. I want to say something. I've seen something that, like, I thought was, like, new life because when I was young or younger, I was hiking with my dad and mom, and we were out there, and we saw, like, a bunch of stars, and they looked like they were coming together and stretching out, like when they go into hyperspeed in Star Wars. It looked like that. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. And my mom and dad were just like, that's really cool.
So maybe it was something a little unknown.
No, there is, it's like a super rare science. I don't know what the name is, but it's a super rare event that happens a lot. Not a lot.
So there are planets that sometimes get close to each other, and it's called a conjunction. And guess what? There's one happening right now, Mars and Jupiter in the morning, but there will be more, where planets look like they're getting close to each other because the planets, remember, are moving in the sky because they're orbiting around the sun. So yeah, that's a good thing to keep an eye for. And some people get confused, especially if it's a really bright planet like Venus and it feels like it might be moving because it's near the horizon and it's shimmering. So some people think it's a UFO. But that can happen a lot. UFO doesn't necessarily mean flying saucers. It just means we don't know what it is.
Okay.
So, what's your favorite planet and why? And it doesn't even have to be from the solar system. Just, what's your favorite planet?
Wow, I love that question because you asked about what about other planets that are not in our solar system. And now we know of over 3,000 planets that are orbiting other stars. We call them exoplanets, right? Have you heard that? And some of the exoplanets are incredibly strange, much weirder than our own planets, and those can be pretty wild. There's one, for example, that I think it orbits a star in Cancer, the Crab, and the planet is face locked to its star. Now it's kind of like our moon. You know how you always see the same side of the moon all the time? That's because it's locked. It orbits in exactly the same amount of time it takes to rotate. So in other words, the moon really is rotating, but it rotates at exactly the same time that it takes to orbit. So you only see the one side. Well, this planet I'm talking about is always facing its star, and it's so close to its star that the side facing its sun is always molten, and the side on the dark side that never sees the star is always rock.
Okay.
That's really cool.
Next question.
Do you like Star Wars?
I love Star Wars.
Okay, what is...
Now, the reason I do is it's not just because it's space. It's also because I think it was a really great story. And it moved really nice and fast. It was fast-paced. And it had kind of almost the oldish 1950s sci-fi adventure kind of feel to it. And that's what George Lucas was going for when he wrote it and produced it. In fact, he rewrote the script I think it was 10 times.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, before he got to it. And I think that's what really got it. And it was the first really good sci-fi movie, space adventure movie that had a big budget to it. Usually a lot of space movies and sci-fi movies before that time, if you've probably seen some, they looked really cornball. Low budget. You could see the little models floating around on strings. Yeah, it was, yeah.
That was
Okay.
bad.
What do you do in your free time besides space stuff?
I love nature. And so it's related to that. I like to hike. I like to trail bike. And I love photography. And I like to read. Because I like to keep learning. I always like to find new things.
Okay. JD?
I've read all of Rick Riordan's books. Have you ever heard of him?
No, what did he write?
He is a guy they have dubbed him Storyteller of the Gods because he writes all these mythological books.
Okay.
Put into a modern spin. So I've read all of his books.
So maybe you've heard of the Martian Chronicles?
Nope.
By Ray Bradbury?
No.
Or there's a lot of really good Mars books too those were my generation, but it was those were classics, and a lot of people still read them.
Yeah, I've read some old books. I've read Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
I've read Hobbit, and I've read Wizard of Oz.
Oh, that's a good story.
Yes,
It's
those-
funny to see how many different characters there are in the book,
Yes.
Wizard of Oz, than there was in the movie.
Yes.
Excellent.
Next question.
So I know you already said that you like Star Wars, but what about Star Trek?
You know what? I like Star Trek for different reasons. I like that Star Trek is more like, ooh, this could really happen. This could possibly be our future in terms of how we used our brains and our technology to explore rather than war with each other. And I think that's what gave everyone so much fascination and hope. Because when the very first Star Trek series came out in the 60s, it was not that big of a hit at first, but it really caught on. And even to this day, as I think you guys know, it has a huge following and conventions and all kinds of stuff. Now, here's something. I don't know how many characters you know from Star Trek, but especially from Star Trek The Next Generation onward, there was a character called Q. Q, the Omnipotent. And he would suddenly appear and be kind of troublemaker, kind of challenge people. And do you guys ever remember seeing that character?
I never was into Star Trek.
I started it and then I never finished it. I'm probably gonna finish it sometime, but
Well, the reason I bring him up is his real name is John Delancey. He's a very famous actor. He's done a lot of different parts. And I got to work with him twice to narrate planetarium show scripts for us. And the reason that he was so fun to work with is he was into it. I mean, big time. He has spent hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, bringing all kinds of famous people to his house to talk about science education and how to do it better. And so there are some people like that, that have gotten into things like Star Trek, that even act in Star Trek. Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker himself. He's a big science enthusiast, and he narrates one of our planetarium shows too. I didn't get to narrate him, but he loves that stuff too.
Next question.
So I have a question.
Sure.
Is omnipotence knowing everything or being able to do everything?
Thank you for asking that question. Omnipotent means, you can be everywhere, and you can even move within anywhere you want. At least that was the definition as it was done in Star Trek. And it is kind of knowing everything, but it's at least being able to navigate within everything.
did you see the meteor shower or the northern lights?
Yeah, the Perseid meteor showers is going on right now, and
Yes.
guess what we did on Sunday night? 2 nights ago, for the date of this broadcast. We went up to Port Crescent State Park. There's a dark sky preserve up there, and not only did we see meteors, we also got the northern lights.
That's really cool.
They came out that same night.
Yeah, I slept over at my grandmother's house the date of them,
Okay.
and I went outside, and all of a sudden, boom, they're there. I was like, whoa.
And
It was the meteors.
And it's still active, both the meteor shower and the northern lights. But for the date of the broadcast, don't worry. You can go on to websites like NOAA, NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. NOAA has an aurora alert site, and you can go on and see if maybe there's aurora coming.
Wow.
Okay. What's the best part of your job?
I love being creative. I like to come up with new ideas for presentations and programs, because think of it, we're kind of like producers. We can produce things that feel like movies, but they cover the entire dome. And then we can also do presentations that are live. So we can ask you questions, have you observe something, and tell me what you think.
Okay. Next question.
Have you ever met a real astronaut?
I have.
Who?
A couple of them. Several of them. One was John Young. John Young walked on the moon in Apollo 16. And it was kind of cool at the time because when I met him, I was the director of the John Young Planetarium in Orlando, Florida. So I got to go up and shake his hand and say, "Hey, I'm Mike Murray. I'm the director of your namesake." And so that was pretty cool. He was actually kind of a very, very quiet, kind of laid-back kind of guy, but you would not want to mess with him when it came to something serious. And after the Challenger accident, he became a special, what do you want to call it, special director to the director of the NASA Johnson Space Center on safety. So he was in charge of making a lot of fixes and changing things to the space shuttle after the Challenger accident. Mm-hmm. The other astronaut that I could think of that really impressed me was a guy named Tom Stafford. And he also flew in the early days, and he flew on Apollo 10, which was the dress rehearsal for the moon landing. So he went all the way to the moon, they got into the lunar module, they went all the way down to about 9 miles from the surface, and then jettisoned the bottom part to come back up, because it was just a dress rehearsal, right? Mm-hmm. And here's the funny part, is they made sure not to put enough fuel in the top part of the lunar module so they wouldn't be tempted to land and say, "Oh, look, see, we just did it by accident. Oh, darn."
That's good.
So that was the way they knew, "Oh, well, yes, we can't land. We better leave it to Neil and Buzz."
No.
Next question.
That's you. Oh, wait, never mind, that's me. Do you have a star named after you?
No, but here's the funny thing about star names. There are several companies out there that will try to sell you a certificate and point out a star in the sky and say it's yours. Unfortunately, that's not official. It's great for a novelty, but nobody will ever recognize that your name is on that star except you and the company that took your money. There's only one body, one official organization that can name things in space. It's called the International Astronomical Union. They're the ones that decide what names we put on planets, on asteroids, on comets, on exoplanets, all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. Craters, all the craters on the moon and that kind of thing. They still sometimes add new names because, good grief, there's tens of thousands of craters on the moon, right? They haven't all been named yet. So.
What's your favorite pet?
My favorite pet? I've had German Shepherds now for 23 years. And I've had lots of pets. I've had gerbils and mice and hamsters and rabbits. I've had an iguana. I've had cats. I've had fish. But dogs, especially German Shepherds, are my favorite because they're smart.
No, cats are smarter.
That cats are smart in a way, but they're also neurotic. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you're not wrong. Cats with the 4 o'clock cat zoomies.
My mom loves cats. She always has about 6 or 7 of them. And she has a T-shirt that says, "You say cat lady like it's a bad thing."
Well, that's all of our questions for you today.
Thanks, you guys, for having me. Really appreciate it.
Do you have any questions for us?
Oh, my gosh, of course I do.
Oh, no.
We'll go each by each.
Okay.
Just go.
So, I guess my first question is, when you think about space, do you think it's important?
Yes.
Why?
Because it's where we are. It is pretty much, I think of space as like a box, and that's the box that holds everything in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's our Amazon package.
You're not wrong.
Oh.
It's just an Amazon package. God is the one getting the Amazon package delivered to him.
I like the creative mind over there. Yeah, thank you. All right. Any thoughts? What do you think about space?
I kind of think the same as JD, because to me it's just a big black hole to me.
But even though things are really spread out, what kind of things are in that big hole we call space?
Planets, stars, comets, asteroids.
Anything else? Can you think of any others? I'll give you a hint. There are these huge islands of stars, hundreds of billions of them, all together in one city. Do you know what we call those?
No.
Starts with a G.
Galaxies.
A galaxy. So the Milky Way, for example, that we see in the night sky, that's just a part of our big spiral-shaped galaxy called the Milky Way. But there's like 200 billion stars in it. So the reason I'm asking that is that there's actually a lot of stuff in that universe, even though it has a lot of empty dark space in it. And that is what made us.
I actually got a quick question for you.
Go ahead.
What's your most favorite, the Big Dipper or the Little Dipper?
Wow. Well, I would probably have to stick with the Big Dipper because it's bright, and you can use it as a pointer. You can use the shape of the Big Dipper to guide you to other places in the sky. The Little Dipper's kind of cool because if you go out where it's super dark and then you can see the rest of the stars, it's like, oh, surprise, there really is a dipper up there, because most of the time you can't see all of the stars of the Little Dipper.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right, let's see. I've got one more question. If you could be an astronaut, would you do it?
No,
Why not?
because I don't want to be an astronaut.
You don't want to be an astronaut. So, there is no right or wrong answer. You do not have to want to be an astronaut. You know why? Because being an astronaut takes an enormous amount of time and practice. And you have to like to wanting to do things over and over and over again in order to get better at it. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong if you don't want to do that, because that's one of the reasons why I couldn't. I have the attention span of a gnat. Okay? And so I tend to like to jump around and do lots of different things at once. And that's why I love planetarium work, because I get to do something different every day. Mm-hmm. But an astronaut also can be dangerous, as we've seen. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of things about it. Now, here's the other thing I learned. Being in the space program doesn't mean you have to be an astronaut. Mm-hmm. When the Apollo program was going on, there were 410,000 NASA employees. That's what it took to get us to the moon. So it takes a lot of people, scientists, engineers, medical doctors, mathematicians, all of these different people. And that happens in a lot of places that you might go to work. Mm-hmm. Okay?
So I would not want to go to space because how high up you are. Like...
You don't like heights?
No.
Well, the good news is most of the time you're in a capsule and there's just just small windows.
Yeah.
But you know what? The thing is, the astronauts, those that have been up, that I talked to, they felt a sense of euphoria. Do you know what that means?
No.
It's kind of like you're so excited, and yet it feels like, wow, almost like you're in a different universe, and it feels so good. So the idea of being up in space and looking all the way down on a three-dimensional Earth, and it doesn't feel so high anymore. Mm-hmm. You see the curvature and the planet together. And suddenly all astronauts get this sense. They come back thinking, wow, I just experienced something so amazing, because I could see our Earth as a planet. Mm-hmm. And see how fragile it is, and see that there's no borders, that we all are a part of one planet, one home.
JD?
In a heartbeat.
Yeah, baby.
I'm a nature freak, and I love space.
All right.
So much.
Let's do it. Yeah, I'm a little old to go into space now, but boy, for a long time I thought I was going to try to go into or apply.
Okay.
But I know I would have been rejected.
Okay. What I won't like is the quarantine, because when you go into space, you have to go into like a month-long quarantine where you're like shut off from the rest of the world, because people don't want like germs from outer space coming in, because we don't have a cure for those.
I don't know how much they do the strict quarantine anymore. Now, for the very first astronauts that went to the moon, oh, it must have been horrible for them, because they put them in that little Airstream trailer, especially the first 3 missions. And I think they were in it for like 3 weeks. it was a long time. And I mean, every day they were doing blood tests and urine tests, and they were poking and prodding. That must have been a drag. So, yeah. And they came out free.
They were just like, help me.
Yeah, pretty much.
I don't want to do this.
You know, they would smile for the cameras, but I'm sure once the cameras went off.
Screaming into the pillow every night.
Just let me out of here.
Let me out.
Thank you, Mike Murray, for your time. This is Verlin Boys and Girls Club podcast. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Bye.
Rawr.
Right.